Good morning to everyone. Welcome to Girls About Town, and I've got a lovely guest here today, Pauline Young. And Pauline, one of your skills is you're a florist.
I am, Nicola, and thank you very much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this. Yes, so I fell into floristry quite a few years ago, about 30 years ago, when I lived in Ireland. And when I decided to move to the UK, it opened lots and lots of doors for me. Managed to work in the West End, places like Harrods, the Ritz, serve some very, very famous people. So yeah, floristry is a big part of my life.
Can I just say, because it worried me a little bit, I actually chose that first piece of music before I knew you were a florist. And so I thought, let's start off with that. It'll be good to introduce Flat Flower. And I didn't know you were a florist. And so...
A nice bit of synergy, Nicola.
A nice bit of synergy, yes. So you came to the UK. What made you become a florist?
I fell into the job, believe it or not. I was working for a couple who have a very successful business in Ireland, and I started looking after their children. And then come summer holidays, when the kids went back to school, at the end of summer holidays, they said, actually, you're really good with our kids. We'd like to keep you on. So will you come into the shop and help us in the mornings? So I would go into the shop in the mornings, sweep, condition flowers, do all the runaround. So mine was literally a shop floor apprenticeship, and within about a year and a half, 2 years, I actually worked my way up to manage the shop.
Yeah.
So I worked hard, and I didn't know a rose, barely knew a rose from a carnation, but just absolutely loved everything about flowers. I had a wonderful teacher. Great team of people that I worked with, and it was just honestly the best years ever.
Yes, and you and that was in Ireland.
Yes.
And you brought that skill over to England.
I did, yeah. I came over just for a little while. I never really meant to stay. I was only coming over for a year or two, and then I've stayed. Met my husband over about 21 years ago now, and sort of never looked back. So although I miss Ireland,
yes,
I wouldn't be going back to the country I left.
But Swindon actually is a bit like Ireland in the match of its greenery. If there's one way of describing Swindon, is so much greenery.
And you don't have to travel too far. You've got beautiful places on the doorstep, Liddington, Wombre, even I like a trip out to Rawton just to park up and overlook the lights of Swindon.
Yeah.
And Swindon is a friendly town. Swindon's a really friendly town.
Friendly town, yes.
Yeah.
It's a green, friendly town is how I would describe Swindon.
Yeah, I'm lucky where we live. We live close to Shaftesbury Lakes, and we live quite close to Coatwater as well. So there's nice bits of nature on my doorstep when I feel the need to commune.
Yes, so that's it. And that's it. Well, we'll come to bits more about nature after the next song. So let's listen now to Blondie with a Tonic. Well, as a florist, you obviously must get a lot of calls for birthdays and weddings and other events like that.
I am at the moment. I had retired for a few years because, in addition to being a florist, my husband and I are also full-time foster carers.
Okay.
And now that my husband's at home, we're both foster care, and it gives me a bit of time to go back out and do the things I love to do.
Yeah.
So I'm now a trained celebrant, which I'm going to do alongside floristry.
Yeah.
And the two seem to match really well. So you're helping people at the worst and the best times of their lives. So yeah.
So if you can explain to listeners what a celebrant is, because I hadn't heard of the term.
Okay, yeah.
So if you can explain what a celebrant does.
Okay, so what a celebrant-led ceremony is, so we can officiate at funerals, weddings, vow renewals. Divorce ceremonies are a big thing, believe it or not. And naming as well. So for people who are non-religious but still would like to have a celebration for their child, We do naming ceremonies, and instead of godparents, we have guide parents who will
Oh,
take
lovely.
on that godparent role,
Yeah.
but not necessarily in a religious sense. So they're still making the same commitment as a godparent.
Oh, that's
So
lovely.
I think it's
Yeah.
a nice thing. With weddings, unfortunately, we're not allowed to marry people legally. That still has to happen in a registry office. But once you've done that side of things, then you come to me, and we can incorporate lots of different ceremonies into the celebrant-led ceremonies, such as the unity candle, jumping the broom, which is a fun one, the sand ceremony, jar of wishes. There's so much that we can incorporate to make the day really, really special. And everything is about the wedded couple. It's their ceremony, their way. That's it.
And you can being a florist, you can
I
do
do
the flower side as well.
Yeah, so I'm
Lovely flowers for
busy.
them.
Yeah, generally busy for 48 hours like a loon, and then when I'm there in my gear, that's it. Celebrant head on, and my focus is on making this the best day imaginable
Lovely.
for my families.
And you can do civil partnerships as well.
Can do civil partnerships, absolutely. Yeah, whatever. It's your service, your way. That's it. It's
Lovely.
simple as, yeah, definitely. My catchphrase is, weddings don't have to be formal, and funerals don't have to be sad.
No, because you're celebrating someone's life, aren't you? That's the.
And this is what we're finding more and more people want to do. They're turning away from the religious end of things, and they want more informal, more fun, more celebration. Hence the term celebrant.
Yeah, a friend of mine, he also worked for the railway alongside me, and a very good friend of mine. And his copying went away on the rollers to Thomas the Tank Engine, and because that's how he saw life.
Yeah. Well, I've got my tune picked out. Unfortunately, I can't say it on there because it's an Irish one. I'll tell you the details afterwards. You can have a look and have a laugh later. But that's going to be played at my funeral. But I said it's a little bit naughty.
All right, okay.
But we might have a listen at it during the break and see what you think. Then we'll find a way to describe it to the listeners.
Right.
But it is. It's your service, your way.
Yeah, it's lovely because before everything was a fixed sort of pattern, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
it didn't fit everyone's lifestyle.
No. And as a celebrant, the things that I'm listening out for, being a florist, I've learned quite a lot over the years, because you're with people at the best and the worst times of their lives. So
Yes.
your weddings, babies being born, but with funerals as well, people handle grief very differently. So you have to be able to sit alongside them and just go with them and sit in the sadness and sit with the pain. And it's very much the same as a celebrant. I'm listening, the detail I'm listening for, okay, so they worked for whoever for 20 years, but the detail I'm listening for is Grandad made the best egg on toast. Those are the details I'm listening for as a celebrant, because that's what made this person a wonderful Grandad in the eyes of their child. Or Nanny knit me this teddy when I was very small, and I have it to this day. These are the personal aspects of a person's life.
Yeah, I can remember when my grandmother died, there was so much to organise that I didn't really it didn't hit me what had happened. And it was only when the funeral coach actually pulled out on the main road and the number 23 bus stopped, and the driver and conductor both took their caps off. And that is what I remember about that, because it hit me then.
Yeah.
Because I was so much to organise, these forms, that form, everything, and it does. But you can get very busy at the time.
And you don't have time to deal with the actual physical loss.
Yeah.
I remember when my mum passed away, I knew I was going to be sad, but nothing ever prepared me for the physicality of that loss.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, so there's a wall and I'm a steam engine, I've just hit the wall, and how do I live for 5 seconds without this woman?
But I remember my grandmother for all the useful things she taught me. Cooking, simple things like if it grows above the ground, you put it in boiling water. If it grows below the ground, you can cook it in cold water.
Except for potatoes. New potatoes you must cook in boiling water.
Yeah, that's the odd one, the new potatoes.
The new potatoes,
yes. They are, as you say, they bring out the flavour better in boiling water.
Yeah.
Because being from Ireland, you'd know that.
Yeah, you see, we can talk about spuds for forever.
You can.
Yeah, absolutely.
But talking about celebrating events, and we mentioned quickly birthdays.
Yes.
Have you got someone in your family?
I do, actually. My husband, Steve, and my very best friend, Naomi, both celebrate their birthdays today. So I don't know if they're listening in. I hope so. But just happy birthday to Steve and happy birthday to Naomi. I'll see you all later.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can find a piece of music for them. You know, there's only one piece of music that we can play for them.
There? Yeah.
And the version is Stevie Wonder's version. So we'll drop that in now. Quick change in the running order there. And to your husband Steve and your friend Naomi. This record says it all. There was happy birthday to Steve and Naomi there. So, did they expect that?
No.
No. Well, there we are. That's a nice surprise. And going back to florist, it's not simply a case of just poking some flowers together, is it? You've got to blend it and get your colours right. I couldn't do it because I'm virtually totally colourblind. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate the flowers. If you were to ask me what colours they were, I couldn't tell you.
Oh, that's a pity, really, because flowers I just love combinations of flowers. And yes, you're right, it's not about whacking a few flowers. This is very hard for me to say as an Irish person. I think you'll appreciate it. In floristry, we go by the 1/3, 2/3 rules. I said that in my best TH. But in Ireland, we say 1/3, 2/3. And it's all about creating visual balance. So not just does it have to look that balanced colour-wise, physically the arrangement has to be balanced as well, otherwise it'll just topple forward. Again, but that's something you learn. It took me a long time to learn it, but once I was there,
It's a form of art, isn't it?
It is, yeah, definitely. And to be working with fresh flowers is just such a gift. The fresh flowers brighten everybody's day.
They do, and when someone actually gives you some flowers, it's such a lovely feeling, isn't it?
It's the thought behind it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I love choosing flowers for, if I choose flowers for a friend, I choose what I feel suits them. So I've got one friend she's very classic and elegant, so I'd always choose white and greens and elegant flowers for her. My other friends, Naomi, she's going to get a very nice, colourful bunch of flowers at some point today because she's colourful, she's vibrant, she's different, she's a bit of a hippie, she's a bit like me. We're just a bit of a mixture.
What I find is very worrying when I send someone flowers who perhaps lives in another part of the country, is I'm relying on a florist the other side of the country to get my specification right, and that always worries me. Whether they get it right or not. So far, I must admit, if they've got it right.
Yeah.
But I've got that concern.
Yeah. If you use well-established florists, so I always look at their websites, and I can tell, pictures that they've just downloaded against pictures of their actual work.
Yeah.
And I'll be able to say, actually, they might cost a little bit more, but it's worth spending that little bit extra to get the style and the quality of the flowers. So always do your homework.
Yeah, if you're making someone's day, it's worth spending that extra couple of pounds,
absolutely,
isn't it?
Absolutely, to make it worthwhile.
Because it does make someone's day.
I tend to like as well with not just flowers, I love plants, believe it or not.
Right.
And I like plants because, and things like orchids and stuff, they're easy to look after. And they last longer than a bouquet. Probably shouldn't be saying this, but they do last longer. And then with plants, you can take them out of the arrangement. You can put them in pots, put them around the house. Some of them can probably go in the garden, and you have them then forevermore. So it's also quite a nice option.
Yes, but some people you get to know don't like plants and prefer the cut flowers.
And
if you know the people, you know their preference.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because my ex, she couldn't. I bought her actually pot plants, and she was in tears. She said, "I didn't realise, I hadn't done my homework, You know, she wanted cut flowers, and you know, it really upset me that I'd got it wrong.
Yeah, no, as you say, you have to know. There's no point in giving potted plants or to somebody who will just look at them and kill them, who you know isn't going to enjoy looking after them. Then yeah, cut flowers all the way.
Yeah. And where do you get your flowers from?
I get mine from Flower Vision in Bristol, so I buy direct from a wholesaler.
All right.
But then times, you know, if I'm looking for a quick bunch for myself or at home, quick nip down to Tesco's or some such place and just buy there. But
Yeah.
you know, but for my professional work, it's the wholesalers.
Yeah, we've had a funny couple of years, a really strange couple of years. Couple of years we never thought we'd have to go through. Did your business increase during that time or decrease?
I wasn't actually working the business then, but I have been in contact with florists who I've worked with, and they have their own businesses. And obviously when we went into absolute lockdown,
Yes.
there was just nothing doing. But then when they were allowed to open and to trade, they did it very cleverly. They did all their deliveries, so there was no face-to-face contact. But I mean, there's no denying they'll have taken quite a hit. They've taken a hell of a hit.
Yes.
But you know, once they were able to open and trade, they were able to find ways around it. So there was nobody coming into the shop. Everything was done over the phone or via email. They've got websites, so that made it easier.
Yes.
And then just doorstep deliveries, so that made it a bit more. They were able to earn some money then.
Well, that's it. And hopefully things will pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the worrying thing, though, I'm looking at flower prices now having come back into the industry, and I get a fright every time I see the wholesale price because everything has doubled from when I was fully in the industry about 10 years ago. And I'm looking at thinking, God, how are they making a living?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have to then pass that price on to your customers.
Yeah.
So everything is just so much more expensive. Then you factor in Brexit, you factor in the petrol, the oil, the increase in fuel, and all of that comes down the line to our customers, which is horrible because we don't
And
want to
yet
do that.
also I'm hearing that in some parts of the country, we've got flowers that there's nobody there to pick. We haven't got the flower pickers.
Yeah, that's because with the whole new Brexit thing, you know, we're not getting that migrant staff to pick the flowers and the vegetables. So it's hard to harvest what's grown locally.
It's an awful shame having flowers going to waste.
It's a shame having anything going to waste.
Yes.
It's an absolute shame. Especially when you look at our farmers. I used to work with National Trust and I was part of the food and farming team, and I met some wonderful people doing some amazing diverse work out there. You know, who they can't rely on just normal farming. They've gone into farm shops, local produce. They're specialising, you know, selling raw milk, and yet we're upset because we can't import stuff from the Ukraine. But why aren't we buying from our local farmers? Why aren't we buying local produce? And supporting the local farmers in and around the UK. I buy my beef direct from a farmer in Stroud. I'm off down tomorrow to pick some beef up from her.
Yeah, it's always good to support local businesses. And if I go to a different town and I think I really would like lunch and I'd like some coffee, I wouldn't dream of going into the chain cafes or anything like that. To be honest, the way I do it is I look for the builders' vans and the plumbers' vans, see where they're all parked up, and go in that little local cafe.
Because they know where the food is good, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. Because they won't have any rubbish.
No.
And that's how I do it. And then I'm supporting the local business for that area.
Yeah, I mean, I object to paying £5 for a coffee.
Yeah.
I'm a bit tight, actually. But no, I won't pay £5 for a coffee out. And like you, I do like to support locally. Where I can.
Where you get your tea in a mug.
Absolutely, and it's a nice colour as well.
Yes. Let's go to a piece of music you've chosen. Diana Ross and the Supremes, The Happening. Flowers, the thing is, they're not meant for us to enjoy. No, they're there for the insects. And what we see is, oh, that's a pretty flower. a bee or other insects that pollinate the flowers, that's like the final approach to Heathrow. It's all lined out for them to land exactly in the right place to pollinate the flowers, and what an excellent job they do.
Absolutely. I mean, it sort of saddens me to see the crisis we have with our bees. And I attend a fortnightly breakfast club meeting with a group of other business people, and one of the other members, Phil Rand, he is a beekeeper, and every week he would have a very interesting fact about bees. And then one week he told us that his swarm had literally left.
Oh.
Yeah, they just left, and I was like, oh goodness, I never knew that swarms would do that, but there you go.
Yeah, we had some people on here after their hives were vandalised out in Stanton Woods.
Yeah.
Because they were doing research in the diseases that affect bees, and they'd done a lot of research the research they were doing could save the planet's bees, and vandals set fire to the hives and all their equipment. It was just so sad.
It's devastating. It's mindless. It's absolutely mindless.
But it's just incredible, and that's been going on for millions of years. Bees have been landing on flowers long before we appeared.
And long before we ever cut a flower or grew a flower.
Yes.
I remember having a debate one night with a guy chatting about flowers, and he said, well, weeds are uncultivated flowers. I said, yeah, I suppose they are.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get onto next. Wild flowers. If they cut the hedgerows and the grass verges, all you see is grass. If they just leave them a couple of months, it's amazing that even though I'm colourblind, I can appreciate the flowers.
Yeah.
And it's just so lovely when you see these wild flowers that perhaps you've never seen before.
And you wouldn't take time to look at them. I mean, I noticed now this year with the bridal trend for flowers, I'm doing a wedding coming up at the end of July, and the brief is it's got to look country, like I've just picked a bunch of flowers from the garden, and it's lovely that that's the trend rather than, although I do love a good formal bouquet, Nicola, I have to say,
Yeah.
but I am really looking forward to doing this wedding because I'm going to be using stuff that I would never have used maybe 20 years ago. So it's nice to see the changes, and the fashions are changing, and that embracing of the natural look.
There's a story I heard that somebody was expecting a friend of his from America, and he thought, I've got to cut the front grass anyway, because there was all these buttercups and daisies growing through, and he didn't get a chance to do it. And this American guy, when he got out the taxi, he said, that's fantastic. How did you get all these little flowers to grow in your grass? Because he hadn't seen them before.
Wow.
And he thought that the man had actually gone out and actually planted them.
Oh dear. There's not much you can say to that, really, is there?
No,
not an awful lot.
But this American was impressed.
Yeah.
Then thinking that they'd taken time to do that. And when you look at it, they do look lovely, the buttercups and the daisies.
They do.
Yeah.
I know when as a child I used to sit there and make daisy chains.
Yes.
And buttercup chains, and
Yeah,
then
I know exactly.
the stories around the dandelions and...
Oh, blowing the dandelion clocks. It was so simple things that can, and it made you appreciate nature.
We grew up I grew up in Dublin, but my grandma lived in Wexford, which is southeast coast of Ireland. It's absolutely beautiful. So we would spend all of our summer holidays there.
Yeah.
And we were lucky if we were seen at mealtime, and we literally and the village is still very rural now. Going in fields, chatting to farmers, tormenting cattle. Oh God, there's a bull in the field. Let's get running, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we knew where the hedge strawberries were.
Yeah.
We knew who was tinning carrots and whatnot. We knew where to go.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the East End of London.
Oh, did
and
you?
I had a similar upbringing. And
Yeah.
people say, cows, East End of London? I say, yes, we had cattle, because the part of East London that I lived on was technically part of the Epping Forest.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And after the war, because there was so much destruction of houses in London, well, everywhere in England, but particularly in East London, where the docks were, so they built some temporary houses on Epping Forest. They were lovely houses. They would never catch fire. They were made of asbestos, which they thought was a fantastic material at the time.
At the time, yeah.
So I grew up in this temporary building made of asbestos, and I loved it because myself and my friends, we would go out all day, and my grandmother used to say to me, "Don't forget to wash your hands after playing with frogs and other things that we found." Did I? No.
Did.
Playing with frogs, eat my sandwiches, find some caterpillars, then go and buy an ice cream. Well, I'm still here. I'm not advising everyone to do that, but I think a little bit of resistance to disease there is a good thing.
Absolutely. My mum used to always say, "A mucky child is a happy child."
Yes, there's that. But and we had such a relaxed summer holiday. You know, it was none of this, what are we going to do now? Because we'd be just sitting there making daisy chains. And
I think we were the last of the organic kids, because it wasn't all planned out. It wasn't all play dates. Organic kids. Organically grown kids. Yes.
And we recycled things.
Yeah. You got 10p for the bottle, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
For your lemonade bottle, that was worth bringing back, wasn't it?
Well, it was.
That and 10p got you an ice cream as well for your
Well,
troubles.
it was, and you know, we didn't think we were doing anything fantastic, but when you compare it with what goes on now, it was fantastic. And we did recycle. We could make all sorts of things.
There wasn't that much plastic. It was mostly paper, wasn't it? There wasn't that much plastic.
Plastic and glass, paper and glass.
Yeah, there's so much of it now.
And if you were going shopping, you took a bag with you. You wouldn't have dreamt of taking, going without a bag and expecting there to be bags in the shop.
In Ireland, we used to be called going to get messages. You go and get messages for your mummy. And that's what that was. You go with the little shopping bag and away you go and get her a few messages and come home. Bit of milk, bit of bread, whatever. We lived sort of shopped daily, really.
Well, we did in East London. It probably wasn't a lot different where I lived in East London, and it was probably the same in Swindon. Yeah. Because Swindon is so green, it wasn't so built up then. It was after the war a lot of it developed. There was obviously industry here with the railway. Yeah. Just as you had industry in various towns in Ireland, there was industry with that, but. Apart from it, it's greenfield, so you can imagine there'd be twice as many greenfields as we got now. Yeah, now that's one of the nice things about Swindon, and I'm glad that we still have all of that green space. Yes. Because we need it. We absolutely need it. I mean, there's a fierce amount of building going on in the town, which I know we need, but we don't need any more sort of developed housing. We need social housing. Yes. To help people. There's such a demand here for social housing. We see that as foster carers. We see it with the families we work with. Yeah. Some of the housing is just not appropriate, really. No. Which is why green space is so important for our kids. And in addition to green space, we have blue sky. We have, yes. So that's your next choice of music. Mr. Blue Sky, the Electric Light Orchestra. We're coming up to the end of the first hour, to take us up to the news. But after the news, we're going to discuss your foster caring part of your life. But you've chosen another piece of music for us, haven't you? Yeah, Billy Joel for the longest time. It's just always been one of those songs that just sings to me. And it makes me smile every time I hear it. If I had a top 10, everything you've played for me would be in my top 10. It's a bit like Desert Island Disc. A bit like Desert Island Disc, exactly, yes. I think we've all got the top 10, and then we've probably got another 10 and another 10. And sometimes music, you hear it and it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Yeah, absolutely. And, so this is for you, The Longest Time by Billy Joel. It's a lovely piece of music, and as I say, but don't go away. We've got the news coming up. And after the news, Pauline will tell us about her foster caring. Welcome back to Girls About Town with myself, Nicola, and Pauline. And we're going to be talking about being a carer. But before that, John Lennon with Woman. I can hardly express. woman there from the late John Lennon. Just think, had he not died and still been producing music, well, you know, you just can't conceive what he would be doing now.
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, taken well before his time.
Yeah.
And I think he would have been supportive of lots of, you know, new artists coming through.
Yeah.
I think he would have continued to be a great.
What a sad loss to the world. But we do have his music from the 60s and the 70s. And
very profound, absolutely.
Yeah.
He was ahead of his time, John Lennon.
Yeah, you only have to listen to the lyrics to some of his music.
Yeah.
And you think, these were teenagers when they wrote some of these lyrics.
They were just so young at the time, weren't they?
And you know, and they compare with a lot of poetry and poems. You know, you think, that's fantastic. How did they come up with these lyrics? Like, wearing a face that she keeps in a jar by the door in Eleanor. And you're thinking, how did they come up with that?
They're very, very clever lyrics.
Yes, and Paul McCartney as well. Paul has come up with some excellent things. And do you know what my favourite Paul McCartney song is? Rupert and the Frog song.
Oh, We All Stand Together.
Yeah.
Oh, you see, I love that one as well. I just think, I think that sort of, for me, signifies lockdown, and definitely as foster carers, that song really does it for me, because we really did all stand together.
I'll see if we got that in our life.
That would be an absolute folly, but wonderful.
Yeah, because my grandson, when I've looked after him, and when my daughter was at work, after she went back to work after having the baby, and I used to feed him. If I didn't have that on, he wouldn't eat his dinner.
Oh, it's such a great. You know, that is so much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun. But for us, the message is we all stand together.
Yeah. Now, you've been a foster carer for how many years?
5 years now.
5 years.
Yeah. 5
and you
years.
love it.
Absolutely.
I can tell by your expression you love it.
It absolutely rocks our world. So both my husband and I are full-time foster carers.
Yeah.
We tend to do the more longer-term foster caring.
Yeah.
So we've got one young lady who's been with us for 5 years, and we've had a few other shorter placements, and now we've had another little girl placed with us, and she's going to be a long-term placement as well. I've just learned so much about ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses. There's quite a lot of training involved.
Yes.
Your compliance, you have to be on a lot of compliance, a lot of laptop time, but the training is what makes the difference. Yes. Understanding behaviours, and thankfully we're now understanding behaviours better than before, because once upon a time if we saw a child kicking off, a smack on the bum, or what a naughty child, whereas we're learning more now that the behaviours signify a problem.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've never condoned slapping. It's just not, and anyway, as a foster carer, it's a big no-no. You just don't do it. But learning about the behaviours and learning about the triggers and dealing with things in a non-punitive kind of way, especially when a lot of these children haven't had the time to understand consequences. So their brains, due to the early life neglect, they haven't developed the way a child's brain would develop within a normal, loving family. I hate that word normal, but within a family. So that brain development isn't there. So why would you put consequences in place for a child who doesn't know what consequences are? All you do is add fuel to the fire.
Yeah, because you don't fully know what that child has been through. Yeah,
absolutely. We don't know. And you know, 5 years in, we're still learning every day how to be the best foster carers we can be. And we learn it not just through the training, but we learn it from our children who come to us. They teach us so much.
Yeah, I can tell you're passionate about this.
Oh, incredibly. Yeah, very, very passionate.
And your husband is passionate about it.
He is, absolutely. And we're very different people, my husband and I. My husband's sense of humour, he's very dry. He's so dry he could pea powder. But that works really well. I said it politely and cleanly, Nicola. But that works really well with children because of his sense of humour. Whereas I tend to be a little bit more strict and a bit more firm. he's the perfect foil for how we do things.
Yeah.
And we work really, really well together, because foster children, they can get in between you and they will try and split and they'll bounce one off the other. It's survival.
Well, your own children will do that.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's just so much need out there. And thankfully fostering isn't, we do the more traditional long term. There is a scheme called Shared Lives or Staying Put, where you can take in a young person who's perhaps not ready to live independently, and that's about sharing your life skills. That's a really good way of getting involved. There are the carers who do respite work, or we call it now short breaks. Again, great for us, but great for our children, that they can go to safe homes with people who are generally going to care for them and who have met all of that strict criteria, so we know our children are safe. But the one that I think is fantastic is the parent and child foster care. Whereas years ago, if a young family, a young couple had a baby and the baby's taken away because they don't have the life skills, what happens now is this young family can be placed in a foster care type situation. So they're still responsible for looking after their child. The foster carers are just overseeing and making sure that they're meeting the needs of the baby. And this is a great way of perhaps giving that family a chance to stay together.
Yeah. Anyway, let's quickly go to a piece of music, which Pauline has requested, and I mentioned as well, and I love as well, and I'm sure any youngsters who are listening, or carers, or parents, in fact, that covers so many people. Paul McCartney and the Frog Song, We All Stand Together. That is such a fantastic song, and children love it, don't they? They really love it. My children, they could watch it over and over again, the video there, with the fish that jumps out of the water and the two black cats that are up to no good. It was such a fantastic thing.
I remember it just being very magical at the time. I would have been probably young enough to enjoy it when it came out originally, and it's an absolute folly. I mean, the whole orchestral side of things, he must have had just so much fun putting that together. Yeah. Because that's what it is. It's a beautiful piece. And
so many children have appreciated it, and so many parents and foster carers have appreciated it, because while the child's watching that, they'll keep opening their mouth and you can shovel more in their dinner.
Is that your personal experience, Nicola?
Oh yeah, that was from my grandson, yes. Yeah.
How old is your grandson now?
He's 9 now.
Oh, he's not old enough to be embarrassed just yet then.
Not yet,
Give it a few years.
But my youngest daughter, she loved it as well, and so her grandson that I used to feed, but she loved that. She thought that was fantastic.
It's almost like a little bit of a legacy going down through your family, isn't it, that song?
And probably lots of other people's family, because you loved it as well.
Oh, I love it as well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what age children do you care for?
Well, at the moment we care for 0 to 18.
All right.
But we also have a young lady who's going to be going into adult care, and we're able to care for her beyond 18 up to 23, which is absolutely fantastic, because it means that we have longer time to help her get the skills that she needs to function as an adult in life generally. Yes. Because it's so important that 16, 18, children were just, okay, that's it now. No more care for you, off you go.
Yeah, that's so sad.
And that's, you've had all this care. And sometimes back in the day, that care was quite questionable. Yes. Whereas everything we do now, we're quality checked. It's very, very rigorous. But it has to be rigorous. It's got to be. Because you don't want to be adding more trauma to where there's been just too much trauma in their early lives.
Yes, you've got to think of how it affects them in later life.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you heard of some children being, well, I say children, they're cast between children and adult, being basically thrown out on the street.
Absolutely, and the support stops then, and that's really cruel. So thankfully, the care system is, and it's continuing to evolve. it needs more funding. You know, it's taken an awful lot of cuts in the last 11 years.
Does it need more carers as well? Are you short of people?
Always looking for carers. You know, I foster through an agency, and you can foster through local authority. Just have to check what's going to work, what fits right for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're very blessed in the agency that I foster with. We have gay couples who foster very successfully. That's male and female, and their work is phenomenal. And actually, there are times when I will quite happily speak to them because I don't always understand it. But to have these people helping us and fostering alongside, making a difference. So I had a young person once who identified as bisexual, and although I understood it, she also then identified as being pansexual, and I didn't know much about it at the time. So I then go to the people who know, because it's very important I know what being pansexual is, so that I can understand all of that.
Yeah. Basically, it's loving everybody, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And
what's wrong with that?
Not one thing. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with people falling in love with people.
Exactly.
That's it. At the end of the day, I'm glad that this whole pigeonholing is
and we're
stopping.
in enlightened times.
We are.
It's made so much difference to people's lives that gay couples can now marry.
Yes, absolutely, and have the same rights.
Yeah. And because in the past, quite often, the property would be taken by the family. If one of them died, they would have no right to
No rights,
house.
absolutely,
and it's made so much difference to so many people who just happen to love someone of the same sex.
You know, you can't help who you fall in love with.
No, you can't indeed. It's that spark happens.
And it does, and it does. But, you know, we all learn from each other as foster carers, and as we learn from our children. But as you say, yes, there is a massive need out there for other foster carers to come forward. You know, traditionally foster care used to be quite a short-term thing, but now we're noticing that there are more and more children coming into care who need long-term care, who are not going back home. So for people who say, oh God, I don't think I could do this because I couldn't bear to hand the children back, that's not really happening much anymore. And then there are carers who prefer the short-term aspect of foster care. Now, short-term can be 3 weeks to 3 years, depending on the need. But, you know, if anybody's interested, just look into it, see what's there. If you feel that you've got room in your home and in your heart, and it's something that you can do, then by all means.
I love that term, in your home and in your heart.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, giving somebody a room in your house, that's a lodger, that's not a foster carer.
No.
You have to have room in your heart as well.
In your heart as well. Let's go to another piece of music that you've chosen, Tears Dry on Their Own, Amy Winehouse.
All I can ever be to you is the darkness that we know and this regret I got. Shed my tears dry.
And you're actually at that event, aren't you, Pauline?
I certainly am. I will be on the Business Wise stand with my fellow business owners from Business Wise, promoting my Celebrant business and Business Wise, which is a group of business owners, and we basically promote and support each other's businesses, which is wonderful. We do quite a lot of business. Nice little bit of business goes around that room, I'll tell you.
Very good. Well, it'd be nice for people to come and say hello to you.
Yeah, do pop up and say hello.
Yes. Anyone who's listening, come up and say hello to Pauline. She doesn't bite. She's smiling.
No, I don't bite. No, not on a Thursday anyway.
That's a bit worrying. It's Wednesday today. But we're talking about, you know, the children you foster. When they leave you and they go off into the wide world, it must be some sadness.
It is sadness, but then you realise that it's their time to leave. Any of the children who've left us for whatever reasons, we've always said the door is open, come back and see us. So we have one young lady who comes back to see us quite regularly, and she'll come for Sunday dinner with Irish stuffing, because she just loves, and for her it's like coming home. She just slots back into the family again, and it's lovely to see her.
Because Irish cuisine and Irish hospitality, I would say, is the best in the world. I haven't been everywhere in the world, but I think you've got to go a long way to beat Irish hospitality and Irish cuisine.
Well, it's just who we are. It's just we're very hospitable people. We genuinely like people, and we just like to share.
When I've worked out in Ireland, Irish breakfast, you're not even really hungry at dinner time in the evening because that keeps you going.
Yeah, I have to tell you the story about supper in a little while. My husband, he still makes me laugh about it. So years ago we were in Ireland for New Year's Eve, and then on New Year's Day my aunt put this wonderful dinner on the table, and we had everything. Then we had the dessert, and it was Bailey's cheesecake and profiteroles, and sort of 3 of the 7 deadly sins were on there: lust, gluttony and greed. So we ate everything that was put in front of us. We sat down in the living room, fire going, watching telly, and about 9 o'clock my uncle goes, "Hey Anne, what's wrong with you? Are you doing supper?" And myself and Steve looked at each other, and Steve goes, "Supper?" We were just so full.
Yeah.
So anyway, off we did. We got some supper, and we got home to Dublin the next day, and we didn't eat till about 6 o'clock the next evening. We were so full. Yeah, you don't want to be weight conscious around my family.
No, I've been on holiday in Ireland as well as working there, and it's lovely. When I was working in Northern Ireland on the shipping side of British Railways, we went to this cafe, Benny's Cafe, I think it was. There was even bullet holes in the corrugated iron where they boarded up the windows.
Yeah.
But it'd been through the war as Benny's Cafe is, but the breakfast was fantastic, and you didn't want anything to eat the evening.
And a good Irish breakfast with the brown soda bread and the black and white pudding, and
yes.
Yeah, no, you can't go wrong with that, that's for sure.
You can't go on, it kept you going all day.
It absolutely does.
So if people haven't been to Ireland, go out there, because it's the most hospitable place that I've found. I haven't been all over the world. There might be somewhere that's more hospitable in South America or something, but I doubt it. I think you've got to go a long way to beat an Irish breakfast.
And actually,
an
and to
Irish
experience,
dinner.
it's very hard to explain, because we talk about the crack a lot in Ireland, and people say to me, "What is the crack?" And it's just really Irish people. We love to sing, we love music, and I've often been in pubs where one musician will come in and then 2 or 3, and the next thing you've got 10 musicians playing music and singing. That is the crack, but you have to go to Ireland to experience it.
Yeah, when I was working in Dublin, I went out one night, and quite right, I can't sing, but I ended up singing with some people in a pub in Dublin. And it's just so lovely. And you come out and you've got this warm feeling that you've been made so welcome.
You've enjoyed it. You've lowered your shoulders. You know, gets rid of some of the stress. And yeah, it is. And a couple of beers. It's a nice way to spend an evening.
Lovely feeling. So, and these foster children, when they come back for that
That's what
dinner.
they come back for, yeah. And then we have taken a couple of them to Ireland as well. They come on holiday with us. So they're once a foster child comes into our home, that's it. They're part of our family. I come from a massive Irish family. My dad is the eldest of 18 children. Oh yeah, I know. I know.
I'm an only child.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I thought I was an only child. I've since found I've got 2 brothers, but I grew up thinking I was an only child.
Yeah, no, I've got a massive family. My grandma had 18 children.
You've got cousins and nephews.
Oh, I've got more cousins than I know what to do with. I don't need to do a family tree. I need to do a family forest.
I love that term.
Family forest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and we're just very inclusive family. We look after each other. You know, if you cut one, we all bleed.
I love that term. So you come up with some lovely terms today.
Have I? Yeah, I've got some not so lovely ones, but we'll save them for another time, Nicola.
Okie dokie.
No, but we do. Our foster children are really our life. I mean, I think everybody has a calling in life, and this is definitely my calling, and my husband as well.
Okay. And you've chosen another piece of music, the Waterboys. How Long Will I Love You? Well, we've talked about the successes with fostering. What if it goes wrong?
Sometimes, yeah, we have had occasions when perhaps not so much that it goes wrong, we probably weren't the right fit for the young person, and it can happen. It's sometimes, you think you have all the information, but then something triggers, and they don't want to be part of the family, or for whatever reasons that the connection isn't there. Which is why the selection process is so important. Thankfully, I think it's only happened to us three times. But you still wish the very best for the young people. And again, for the young people who've left us, we've recognised that this isn't the right time for them or the right placement for them. They really do need to be in the correct provider for them. So we have maybe one young person who actually needed to go on to a residential setting because of their early life trauma. It's very often when they come into care that the depth of that then becomes apparent, and it's heartbreaking. But you have to do what's right for that young person at the time.
Yeah, you don't like giving up.
You don't, but you have to recognise, because by trying to hold on there, you're actually doing more damage to that young person, and then yourself as a family, because you're feeling like you're failing this person. And I tend to look at it, okay, so this has been our time with you. Your time is to go on. And I know from a couple of young people that it was the right thing for them to do at that time. They were able to go to the appropriate places they needed to be, and make the changes and get the level of support and help that they need. Because really, when young people come into foster care, we have a thing called CAMS, which is supposed to be the I suppose what I'm looking for, the counselling, that side of things, the therapeutic side of things. And it's so oversubscribed to that these young people are not getting the time to safely explore the trauma and help them to deal with the trauma, and that's incredibly sad. We're letting children down wholesale because we're not able to get them that therapeutic input that they need. And that's very, very hard.
And the ones that you've had to say, sorry, you're not in the right environment here, not in the right placement, do they come back and contact you after?
Not normally. I suppose we haven't been doing it long enough. One young person was incredibly young, just 8 years of age. But maybe, when he's a bit older, possibly he could come back. We leave it to them. They just know there's a letter, with photographs. There'll be a record of what we've done together during our time together. That goes with them. To know that. And
you said you haven't actually got any children of your own, but you come from an enormous family, and obviously you're making contact with the nephews and nieces and uncles and all. How do they react to the people, the children that you're fostering?
Well, my dad, just when we were talking about doing this initially, he goes, "Sure, I can be granddad to as many children that need a granddad." So I've got one young lady who calls him Granddad Nicky. And he absolutely loves that, and the rest of the family been really welcoming. There's a couple of hundred children, sure, what's one more? I mean, literally, with the great grandchildren that are coming along, there's hundreds of them. And they just accept, and they just love it.
That's good. Okay, let's go to a piece of music. Let's listen to Luther Vandross now with "The Best Things in Life Are Free." Well, you've got another string to your bow.
Oh, I know. Lots of strings in my bow, Nicola.
Tell us about it.
Oh, I sing with Swindon Big Sing Thing, the friendliest choir in Swindon, under the musical directorship of the wonderful Val Weston. So we were, prior to COVID, we're about 70, 80, 100 members. Obviously, with COVID, the membership not turning up as much, including myself, because of COVID fears and transmission. But we have the best time. Our repertoire is absolutely phenomenal. So we sing things from like Ave Verum, which is a classical piece. Don't remember who the composer is. And the newest thing we've started learning now are sea shanties, like the Wellerman. And it's kind of not what you expect to hear from
Oh, I love the Wellerman.
Oh, we do a really good version of it and roll the woodpile down. You know, Addie Amos, which was a song that was sang on, I think, Britain's Got Talent by that convent school in Kilkenny. And it's kind of not what you would expect to hear coming from us. So it's not all Dram and Jerusalem with the big sing thing. It's very inventive and it's a lot of fun. Lots of friendships made. And we're looking forward to getting back out doing some more performances now that lockdown is lifted.
Oh, that's lovely. I always say, and you know, some people laugh at me saying that everybody can sing.
Yeah.
Some of us sing better than others.
Absolutely. But I think it's the joy of being part of something that sounds wonderful. I mean, Val, who's our musical director, she just, her enthusiasm for what we do and for us as a choir and her dedication, she really does get the best from us all. She's truly, truly amazing.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear. And you sing?
I do, yeah, I sing. I mean, as Irish families, we all sing. Weddings, funerals, christenings. I sing when I wake up. I sing when I go to sleep. I'm a bit annoying. I'm always singing.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. And what sort of music what sort of songs do you sing?
Me, my music tends to vary. So I grew up, my dad loves Irish traditional music, so I grew up listening to the Dubliners and all that very traditional stuff. My mother was more interested in country and western, so I listened to a balance of Irish country and western and American country and western. So Dolly Parton is like one of my all-time favourites. But I also like some classical music. I like musicals. So my taste in music is really, really broad.
That's so lovely to hear. Let's go to another piece of music. Let's go now to the Pussycat Dolls with Don't You. Well, a lot of people, after COVID, the restrictions, frightened to go out, frightened to get involved with things. And, you know, has your choir helped those people at all?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we are getting new members, and for them it's their first time out. And it's a lovely, friendly choir. We very welcoming of everybody. I suppose I really ought to say where we are. So we meet on a Monday evening at the Bible Society in West Swindon. Doors open, I think, about 7:10 for a 7:30 start. So for people who are a bit nervous, maybe, you know, just come along, give us a try. You'll enjoy it. We are friendly. That's our buzzword, the friendliest choir in Swindon. And also there is a group as well called Guys and Dolls for perhaps people with the older voices. I don't have those details at hand, but I can get them and forward them on to you, Nicola. So it's a lovely way to sort of get back out in society, do something and start mixing. You know, as a foster carer and running a business, I can find it very stressful. But a couple of hours on a Monday evening over singing and being part of something that sounds so wonderful, it's such a joy, such a pick-me-up. And it's my time. I don't get a lot of spare time to myself. And it's just a lovely way to spend a couple of hours.
I would imagine it would be. As I say, I love singing, but my singing voice is not that great. But as I always say, everyone can sing.
But everybody contributes, do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, there are no stars in our choir, there are no soloists in our choir. We're all there because we enjoy singing, we enjoy being together. And probably from going to choir, we then sometimes have days out. So last November I arranged for a group of us to go and see Hamilton in the West End. You know, and you meeting people and there've been lots of friendship groups formed through the choir, and it's just a lovely thing to do, and especially if people are socially shy,
Yes.
There's always going to be a member there who will look out and help you. There's always somebody to sit beside and chat with, unless Fala's directing and we're supposed to be singing.
Sadly, we're coming to the end of the 2 hours. It's been so lovely to have you here, Pauline. Come again.
Oh, lovely. It's been the quickest 2 hours I've put in for a long time,
Yeah.
that's for sure. Thank you, Nicola.
Come, I'm sure you could come to the Pizzazz show at 2 o'clock one afternoon with myself and Caroline. There's so many things, I'm sure there's so much more you've got to tell us about things that you get involved with.
Absolutely.
So-
it's been wonderful. And Nicola, thank you for making me feel so welcome.
That's it. Well, we try and make everyone welcome here. And
I've really enjoyed every minute. Thank you so much.
good. Let's just play us up to the news with Robert Palmer and Addicted to Love.